States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, I'll call the December 17th special call City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Vach, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Old?
Here.
Ms. Graves? Here. Mrs. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mayor Winger?
Here. Okay, the second thing on the agenda is public comment. Is there public comment? Come forward, Mr. Wilson. Our pleasure.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. My name is Charlie Wilson, and I am a resident of the City of Vero Beach, 1824 18th Avenue, or 2134 18th Avenue, I'm sorry. I'm here for a little bit of a different reason than normally you see me. The reason I'm here is to congratulate the people who won their election this last election. Congratulations, Mr. Kramer and Ms. Turner, in being returned to your seats. Congratulations, Mr. Old, in your victory. The voters spoke loud and clear, and they spoke clearly that they wanted to continue on the path that has been we have been on since 2013, and so I am actually here to make peace, because two things. The first is that with the last election, the cycle of making sure that the sale of Vero Electric is not realized is concluded. I believe that the Indian River Neighborhood Association and their candidates, along with the FMPA, have now successfully concluded any opportunity whatsoever to have a sale of Vero Electric to FP&L. So, from the done deal in 2013 to the dead deal in 2015, there's been no ardent supporter more ardent about the sale than I have been, and I will tell you that I now agree with Mayor Winger and Mr. Kramer and others that the deal is dead. Now, since the deal is dead, what happens now? Well, two things. First is that limits the City of Vero Beach and what they're able to do. So I don't have to come here anymore after tonight and talk to you about the electric issue, because it really doesn't make any difference. The people that now make the decisions will be the courts, the legislature, and possibly the voters of the state of Florida. So we can all agree now that we don't have to worry about the electric issue, because it's gone, it's done, and frankly, y'all don't have anything to do with it. Because you've said to yourselves that you would like to sell if you could, and you can't. So if you can't, who can? So the point is that we now no longer have to have this divisive issue before us, because frankly, it doesn't have anything to do with you folks. We're going forward with a statewide referendum, meeting with groups to have a statewide referendum that moves all munis under the Public Service Commission. It'll cost us about $1 million to collect enough signatures, so that it's not an issue of Vero Beach, it's an issue of the state of Florida. And frankly, it's out of your hands. I witnessed the negotiating session today. The city is going to protect its interests, and there is only two pathways forward. One is litigation, which the Indian River Shores is taking care of, and the other is legislation, which either the voters or the legislature will go forward. So the good news is that now we can start working together on some other things, like the lagoon or stormwater, or we've got some wonderful events that we're getting ready to plan for this coming year, and I hope that we're going to be able to work together on those things. So my effort this evening is to close the door and close the chapter and close the book on what we've been doing since 2009. You have won. There will be no sale, and we will see where it goes from another source. In the meantime, let's see what we can do together. I offer you cooperation and helpfulness and peace and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Further public comment, please. Anybody else want to come forward? Okay, with that, I'll close public comment. Items for discussion, number 3A, mediation update and steps forward. Mr. Conner, you want Mr. Wright to do that? Is that the format we're following here?
Yes, sir, we will. As you know, Mr. Wright represented us today in the, our mediation process that we had, and we went through several hours of that exercise. We have put a time frame in place now in which we will try to work out some of the differences. But, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Jim, Wayne, citizens. I'm always glad to be here. Thank you. First, I'll talk about an update of the mediation session today. It started a few minutes after 9:30 and wound up around 3:40 p.m. this afternoon. The mediator was Carlos Alvarez, a longtime attorney who has practiced on electric utility matters, mostly relating to transmission line and I think some power plant siting. But he had a long career working with electric utility issues. He, I think, did a wonderful, admirable job. I have worked with him once before, as has Mr. May, as has Mr. Reingold. And he offered several precepts, principles that I think we should all keep in mind as this whole process goes forward. He said, even though we have three disputing parties, the town, the city, and the county, this is one community, and we need to look for a solution. He said, winning is resolving a problem. It's not winning a decision in court or at the Public Service Commission. He said, all of us should be scared of the court system, and we need to evaluate all of our alternative outcomes, and no matter how certain we are that the probability of our success is 99.5% or whatever it is, when you're dealing with the courts, you have to really think hard about the probability of losing being at least 20%. It's something we have to consider. He also said, nobody in this mediation process should expect to get everything that they want. I think these are good things to keep in mind as we go forward. The parties gave their opening statements regarding the status of the proceedings and our positions thereon. Mr. May for the town, Commissioner O'Brien for the county, and myself for the city. After which, Carlos identified two real problems. The first one is all customers want lower rates, and we all agreed to that. And he said that generally speaking, a lot of customers anyway want a representative type utility authority where there's geographic representation of others. Those were the two main problems as he identified them. There was some discussion about the wording of everything, but not long after he made those comments, we had gotten a foreshadowing from Mr. May that the town had a proposed settlement that they would offer at the appropriate time, and Carlos said, well, this is the appropriate time, and Mr. May put forward the town's proposed stipulation or settlement structure for purposes of today's mediation. I understand that each of you has a copy of this in front of you, and I won't go into it in great detail, but it basically offered a 5-month abatement of their lawsuit in return for our agreeing that the city would expressly acknowledge that the town may provide electric service to its citizens, the town's citizens, upon expiration of the franchise agreement, and that we would honor the town's right to conduct an evaluation, which may include but not be limited to an RFP, of the most appropriate means for the town to provide electric service. We asked for and obtained the opportunity to discuss this. Actually, I think we asked for and got the opportunity to discuss this. There was some discussion about what it meant, but after the city's mediation team had an opportunity to discuss this, we reported back that it was the consensus of the mediation team that we could not support this, that they were really asking us to concede the second count of their lawsuit. They were asking us to agree in writing that they could serve once the franchise agreement expires. That's the second count of their complaint. We don't agree with their legal analysis. We don't agree with their arguments or conclusions, and we said we're not going to sign this. In the meantime, Mr. Alvarez had come up with the idea of what he initially called a 6-month cooling off period, or I referred to it as a 6-month standstill period, and he referred thereafter as a 6-month options review period. Whatever you call it, the basic concept was that we would all stand down and move forward to evaluate all of our options. In that connection, he identified several potential solutions, of which, on an interim basis, the town's proposal was one, but he also identified the following. Have an independent representative that is geographically representative utility authority. That's one component of a potential solution. Reduce the general fund transfer. Continue seeking amendments to the OUC power purchase agreement. Talk with FMPA further to see if there's anything we can do on that front. Pursue other rate reductions along the lines that we've talked about in connection with the rate study and the system study. Explore getting out of the FMPA PPAs when the plants are retired. Have an independent outside determination of the reasonableness of rates, and I'll loop back to that in a minute. And continue pursuing whatever there may be to pursue with respect to the FPL purchase or our sale of the system to FPL, which I expressly said 2 or 3 times, maybe 4, is still on the table if somebody can come up with an idea for how to pull it off. We, after further discussion amongst the mediation team, we agreed that we're completely fine. There was a modest difference of opinion between myself and the city manager, but that we're fine with the standstill. And we agreed with and do agree with Mr. Alvarez's underlying point that it's worth fighting for a mediated resolution. We may get there, we may not, but I think that's good philosophy, that's good dispute resolution philosophy. And we said, we're okay with a standstill. Kind of the discussion was over how long it would be. Eventually, the town said, we can't live with a 6-month or even a 5-month deferral, postponement of our ability to get on with things. We will, this is the town speaking, we will, however, be agreeable to a 2-month abeyance till March the 2nd, during which time everybody would go forward and do whatever they want to do. And they will pursue, we're indicating they may pursue this idea of talking, either conducting a request for proposals or a request for qualifications, or just having discussions with potential entities who might want to buy the city's electric system within Indian River shores. And we said, you can talk to whoever you want to talk to. That's fine. That's fine. We're just not going to agree that you have the right to implement anything. Mr. May eventually articulated that he was concerned about the town being on the receiving end of a claim of tortious interference with some of our existing contracts, for example, with FPL, to whom we've agreed to sell all our system, FMPA, to whom we've made great covenant pledges, and OUC, with whom we have contracts. And we said, look, we know no tortious interference agreements. We will cheerfully give you a letter agreement by which we will agree not to assert any kind of tortious interference claim for any conversations that take place. We will, however, not agree to the implementation of anything that might come out of that, just as neither OUC nor FPL would agree to the implementation of anything that may come out of our conversation, say with OUC, to amend our PPA. And we said, basically, that's fine. They said, could we please have a status report a couple weeks in advance? And keying from the fact that the council has a meeting on Tuesday, February 17th, we said we will strive to get them the status report on Wednesday, February the 18th. The last thing in my notes of note that occurred was that Mr. May asked the county delegation, would they also be willing to abate or put into abeyance their pending petition for declaratory statement at the Public Service Commission, and Mr. Reingold said no. It took him 35 or 40 seconds to say it, but he said no. So that's really the report on the mediation that took place today. Why don't I take any questions about that at this time, and then I'll move forward to talk about next steps. Seeing none, may I proceed?
Well, I think one point is what the town presented, you accurately stated that it would throw away the baby with the bathwater, or it was prejudicial. But we did agree that we would bring it back and put it in front of City Council tonight in case there was any disagreement with what the negotiation team thought about it. So if there's any comment about that being the right decision, now would be the time for it, I think.
So the decision is that we will put everything in advance for 2 months?
We'll put the lawsuit. The town will agree to keep their lawsuit in abeyance for 2 months before they would file any kind of motion or other pleading to lift the abatement or abeyance that is presently in place.
Okay, go forward.
Thank you, sir. In terms of next steps, the first and in one view of the world, most important thing is that we need to keep doing what we're doing. We need to continue our conversations with OUC toward lowering rates, which really means I, and some others have to do the analyses that we discussed 2 weeks ago of the relative economics with sensitivities of sticking with the base case, which is perform the PPA as it exists today, going with the option that OUC offered us in October for a 15-year continuance of the contract, same termination date as presently under the contract, but with some discounts, including them getting the St. Lucie option, a minimum take, and the permanent assignment of our gas contracts. Or the second option that they provided to us in November, which is a 9-year term, no St. Lucie option, there's still an 85 megawatt minimum take during the term. The price discounts are not as great as under the 15-year modification. And there would be a provision regarding the gas transportation contracts by which the city could reclaim its contracts if we wanted/needed the gas transportation capacity in order to serve city-owned gas generation facilities at the Vero Beach power plant site by December 31st, 2024. So that's that option. We just need to evaluate that, and you all need to make an informed decision. And I think Mr. Alvarez asked us, could we include could we include as sensitivities therein, looking at changes in the transfer rate, and there's no reason we can't do that as well. So that's one thing. We need to continue with the rate study. And when I mentioned a minute ago, I was talking about Mr. Alvarez's idea that we have an independent outside expert take a look at the reasonableness of the city's rates. I was talking with Mr. O'Connor, and he had the rather obvious idea. I'm sorry I didn't think of it off the top of my head, but roll that into the rate study. These people are public utility, municipal utility rate experts. They're already looking at our cost structure. They're already looking at our rates. Surely we can tweak their scope of work so that they can tell us, given your cost structure, et cetera, your rates are or are not reasonable. And I think that's a really good idea, and my recommendation would be that we implement that. Continue with all the other aspects of the rate study, and continue toward issuing the or selecting a contractor with whom to negotiate a definitive contract to perform the system efficiency/optimization study, which I understand is planned to come before you on January 6th. And to the extent anybody can come up with something to talk about, continue talking about the FPL purchase. But the point is, we need to keep doing everything that we're already doing in that regard. Other things that will happen are Mr. May, this is more procedural, I think, than anything, but Mr. May is going to draft a brief stipulation memorializing our agreement to abate their agreement to abate their lawsuit for another couple of months, and also memorializing our agreement to give them a no tortious interference claim waiver to take that off their minds. It's my task with the pen to draft the no tortious interference letter. Finally, and particularly in light of the county's statements at the end, very near the end of the mediation. I have, at the direction and in consultation with the city manager and city attorney, considered filing our own petition for declaratory statement to the Public Service Commission, asking them to resolve in 2 questions what essentially the county was trying to get addressed in 14 questions, or at least 11 out of their 14 questions had to do with who can do what after the expiration of the franchise. You know, our theory, our strong legal belief is that the Public Service Commission has the exclusive and superior jurisdiction over service areas, and that they have exercised that jurisdiction with respect to the city's service in the service area where we serve. And that's, in my view of the world, that's black letter law based both on statute and case law interpreting the statutes. So our proposal and our consensus recommendation is to file such a petition for declaratory statement this Friday and see what happens. In the normal course of scheduling events, that would get it on the Public Service Commission's agenda on March 3rd. We contemplate asking the county if they would be agreeable to postpone the Public Service Commission's consideration of the county's petition to March 3rd also. If they say no, they can say no and the PSC can go ahead. If they say yes, then we'll have the somewhat more efficient scenario of having both petitions taken up together. There are some technical reasons that have to do with timing of responses and responsive pleadings and giving the PSC staff enough time to write a recommendation that make it truly impracticable to get our petition heard on the February 3rd agenda. Otherwise, that would be fine with me, but that's what it is. So,
Mr. O'Connor, comment?
Yes, sir. The fact of the matter is I think we need to get that PSC designation, and the county may or may not withdraw again come in February. So, in my opinion, we should proceed on our own, and we have the same type of issues that are being faced by the county, but it's shared with us. And I think this declaratory statement would really help at least set the field as to where we're going as we go into the future. And since the county did say or indicated today that they are not going to withdraw theirs, I think it even makes ours even more imperative.
Questions of the council? Go ahead, Mrs. Turner.
Yes, I know that Mr. Alvarez, one of the things he did suggest as far as solutions, obviously, was to complete the sale to FPL. In your comments earlier, it sounded like, okay, yeah, well, we're just kind of not taking any task or doing anything forward. In part of his suggestion to move forward with the sale to FPL, he said to try to bring along Indian River Shores and the county, get them involved with those negotiations so that, if nothing else, at least their comfort level would be that, yes, that we've done what we can to move this forward. Do you have any plans to move along that suggestion?
yes, ma'am, and thank you for reminding me of that. It just, there was a lot to cover and distill into my notes for this meeting. Yes, I am definitely comfortable with, and the mediation team is definitely comfortable with, inviting the town and the county to participate in all of our conversations with OUC, FMPA, and FPL to the extent they take place, and to the extent that our counterparties, OUC, FMPA, and FPL, are comfortable having those conversations. And I said to Mr. May in the meeting, and I know you heard this, I know these people well, and I'll lean on them to try to make it happen. Yeah, there's no reason this can't take place in public. We don't have anything to hide, and I feel good about the prospect of them being present to hear what goes on.
No, but my question is, what actions are you going to take on behalf of the city to try to encourage that kind of discussion? I mean, from what you just said there, well, if there happens to be a meeting and if FMPA doesn't disagree, or, OUC doesn't disagree, then, we'll let them come.
Sorry, I think I was kind of operating from my perspective on how things would unfold. Here's how. Let's take it one at a time. OUC. We have some analysis to do before we can really go back to OUC. My plan is to have that done by sometime in early January, and schedule meetings to talk with OUC about what you and your Utilities Commission have to say about whether you like what I'm going to call option A, the 15-year deal with lower prices with the St. Lucie 2 option and the gas transportation giveaway, or permanent release, to use the technical term, or option B, the 9-year deal with slightly higher prices and no St. Lucie option and the possibility for a city take-back of the gas transportation if we build our own gas-fired generating capacity. We need to know, you need to know, your Utilities Commission needs to know, you need to know what this looks like and what it looks like under some reasonable alternative sensitivity type scenarios, and make a decision. Soon thereafter, my hope, and I'm talking about January 25th-ish, mid to late January, having a further meeting with OUC. In the meantime, I will communicate with Mr. Browder and say, Chris, we want to be able to bring the town and the county with us. Is that going to be okay with you all? And I will communicate with the town and the county and say, please come to the meeting on such and such, or tell us dates you're available, and we'll schedule meetings when you guys can come. And and I'll talk to Mr. Bryant and Mr. Finkley and see what we can do about having further conversations with FMPA. Those positions are pretty definitively drawn, but to the extent we can have conversations with them, I will try to schedule those, and I will invite the county and the town. I will continue communication with Mr. Bryan and Mr. Litchfield regarding possibilities of moving forward with FPL. And to the extent there's any meeting, if they agree that there's a reason to have a meeting and talk, we'll invite the county and the town.
But I guess at that point, then we would be openly requesting input or ideas or whatever from the county and the town as well.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Sure.
Further questions?
I have a question. When we go forward with the PSC filing, if we're going to do that, that would go in March, would that address any of the jurisdictional issues over who has jurisdiction and authority in deciding territorial agreements?
Yes, specifically.
Okay.
Now, we do plan to file that unless there's objection from the council at this time, but by Friday, we hope to have that at the PSC.
Just had a quick question. I know when the county filed this initially, there was quite a strong reaction from the other utilities as to their filing. Do you think this time around, when you put this forward, do you think you'd get the support of the other utilities to stress to the PSC the importance of getting this done?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful.
On the 3rd, what do you expect to get back on the 3rd? Is there just a hearing, a discussion, or
the 3rd of March?
March.
In the normal course of events, Councilmember, the Commission would take up our petition for declaratory statement and vote on it on March 3rd. It's just like a City Council agenda conference meeting where you actually vote on something. And then someday, their internal rules provide for them to issue their written order within 20 days thereafter. So you'd expect to see the order, plus or minus March the 20th.
Okay, I think we have to open it to public comment, do we not? Jim? Wayne?
Well, you had public comment, but, you're not taking action unless you want to take a vote on something.
Yeah, well, I think we probably are going to want to take a vote, so
okay.
Do we need public comment?
Sure.
Okay, public comment.
Motion to approve action.
Approve action, all we're doing is to say that we're waiting in 2 months. We don't have a suit filed or anything else, so what is the action?
The action is to file the PSC statement on Friday.
I'll second it. Further discussion? I'd make a comment. I went up to Tallahassee, and at the last moment, the petition got withdrawn for whatever reason. We're elected by the people of Vero Beach and responsible to the ratepayers to hold down expenses and come to a conclusion as soon as we can. And I think this is a necessary step in light of that feeling. In other words, we can't be sure what the county will do. This way, it'll get resolved, and getting things resolved sooner rather than later, I think, is better. I personally was glad Mr. May went with the 2-month rather than the 6-month. I'd rather get it resolved. So my comment is I think we have to do what we have to do to protect the people. I'll call the motion unless there's further discussion. I'm glad to have further discussion.
Question.
Call the question then, Mrs. Bach.
Mr. Old?
Yes.
Ms. Graves?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mayor Winger?
Yes, so it passes 5-0. Mrs. Bach, is there further, you have further comment?
I just want to make one statement to avoid possible unmet expectations. And the city manager and city attorney and I discussed this last week when we were talking about the petition for declaratory statement. I believe the Public Service Commission should rule on this statement. I think it's timely. I think it's appropriate. I don't know what kind of fire, oppositional fire, our filing this petition may draw. It may draw some kind of motion to not do anything about it because we don't really have to worry about anything vis-a-vis the county till 2017 because it is not until then that the franchise agreement expires. In other words, someone might assert that it's not ripe. The county certainly asserts that it is ripe. We will assert that it's ripe, and so on. But this is a lawyer's caveat, simply to say that I can't guarantee you that the PSC will rule. They might take a similar position and just say, we don't think this is timely, Mr. Wright. Come back when you have a more imminent problem. I just wanted you all to be aware of that.
Mr. If I may have a comment.
Absolutely.
I don't know if those have seen Representative Mayfield's letter regarding the FMPA. This was published not only in TC Palm, but also in Jacksonville Beach Leader and Lake Worth Herald. And it had some interesting comments. I mean, first of all, that FMPAs in their 30-year of existence have never been audited. And I know that those audit results should be released shortly. At the last FMPA meeting, I believe, Mr. Old, the general manager said that a preliminary report would be sent to all the directors before the end of the year.
It was about the 4th or 5th of January, I think. Yeah.
I believe that I would ask that as soon as you receive that preliminary report, that be distributed to all council members. And I think it's important too that, I guess, with this letter being published in those other communities, that we're seeing, a broadening range of interest in, what's going on at FMPA and how they're handling the business. I mean, after the gas hedging fiasco of 2008, we're still paying on this PPA contract, the Taylor swaps, and looking at the upcoming, coal emission regulations. I think, it really needs to be taking a look at that. So,
any further business? I thought we'd each do our comments tonight since we won't be back together to January 6th.
Mayor, the only thing, just for clarification, Chef did point out this stipulation, I guess we'll call it, with the shores and the county about the 2-month delay in reactivating any lawsuit, and the fact that the city would join in with all the other interested parties to waive any tortious interference claim for them talking with or discussing with other suppliers matters of electric supply or along the lines of what we spoke of. And just want to make sure that the council is okay with that and basically give the authority to the mayor, city manager, yourself to sign it. We haven't seen the document, so we're not sure.
We could bring it back on the 6th, couldn't we, Chef? Do you think, or is that too late?
I think we're going to see it.
They want it sooner than that.
Okay.
And we agreed we would do everything we could to expedite things on our end. I will just tell you, I think it's, assuming that it says what we think it's going to say, I think it's a non-event, but I think it's good to have some clear sense of approval from the council.
I think it's conceptually, what we did with FPL and with OUC is right. I don't see any.
Thank you.
Well, if it pleases the council, Jim and I can sign it then.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
When are you planning on signing that? Well, they got to get it on paper.
We got to get it first. I don't know.
I'd just like a copy of it before it gets signed, just in case there is something.
That's perfectly
Okay.
fine.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess there's not further business, then we'll go on to our comments. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Travel safe. I worry about you driving back to Tallahassee tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, and I shall drive safely.
I was reminded, I'm going to say something I said on the radio this morning. I was reminded of, all of a sudden, I'm having a mental moment. But the commentator from Greenwich Village, who was from North Carolina, helped me with his name. And, he talked, he was asked, how could you be from North Carolina? And, how could you live in Greenwich Village? And what he said was that it was a small city. He knew his friends and neighbors. The mediator today talked about us all being one community, and it is true, whether it's the county or Indian River Shores or Vero Beach, we're one community. And somehow or another, we need to get past all this and become one community again. I think you, Mr. Wilson, would agree with that. There were several things that went on that made me proud of Vero Beach. I was at the dog park, and the number of dogs and people celebrating day and night there is really remarkable. Annie Brady and others put together a historical plaque that is in Osceola Park that we went and celebrated Saturday, a week ago, I think it was. And it celebrates the historic nature of that neighborhood going back. It's on 20th and Tom Tiger Boulevard, which is 19th Street. But it celebrates the history of Vero Beach, and that neighborhood got together and made this happen, and they cleaved together. And I think that's really ever so important to have strong neighborhoods. I think also to honor your past and go back into history, people that don't consider where they've been really probably are going no place. That's some other person's idea, not mine. We had our parade, and this year it went all the way to J.C. Park, which was, I thought, remarkable. Jody walked the entire way, Randy's wife, and of course your wife, Alla, did. Main Street, of course, gallery tour will be January 2nd. I had the occasion on Friday and Monday to do the DARE training, and our police force does such a great job at so many things, and DARE, which is centered around young people, fifth graders, to help them understand the risk in their life and the necessity of saying no. But it's something that we ourselves, council has nothing to do with, except that that we agree with it. I wanted to point out that Christmas Dreams is this Saturday at 2 and 6, and what it is young people. It'll be at the Vero Beach High School. Young people performing, and I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think I would encourage you all to go. I had the opportunity to have dinner with Maury Wills and Tommy Davis, and actually they let me into a game. I grounded out twice. I don't tell you, I struck out twice. But historic Dodger Town is so very, very important to us. And we're so lucky to have it, and the commitment of those people out there, Craig and so on. Through the efforts of many people, but certainly Eric, out at the airport, we're going to have the Blue Angels on June 25th and June 26th of 2016. And we recently, Eric and the guys down at the beach participated in the filming with BBC of a film called Almost Royal. Well, going back to what Mr. Alvarez said today, we're more than a brand. Vero Beach is a very strong brand, and I can prove that to you, because if you're from any of these other communities outside the city and someone asks you where you're from, you say you're from Vero Beach, and you're pretty proud of it, and I think that's neat. But Vero Beach is an attitude, and we need to invest in the attitude and put all this nonsense behind us. But, the fabric of our small city, the things I've talked about is very, very strong. And I'm very impressed with the commitment of our people and our commissions. And this is a very healthy community. It's unfortunate that we have the thing we talked about tonight, but we need to get past it. So I wanted to celebrate a little bit what I think about this town. So thanks for listening to me. Mr. Kramer.
Well, I just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we will see you back in January.
Who's next?
And once again, I wish you the warmth and love of your family and friends this holiday season. May you all be of a safe, healthy, happy.
Ms. Graves.
Ditto to all of the above, Mr. Old.
Mayor Winger talked about the parade, and my wife and I did walk in the parade, but we were amazed at the number of people that came out to celebrate that. It just the crowds and the fun, and the kids with their wide eyes and stuff like that. It was an awful lot of fun. I got a real kick out of celebrating. That was fun. Merry Christmas, everybody.
I take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Come on, Ty.